Okay. So now that we've kind of seen the video and it was just really like that little gamut, I feel like you have probably in your language arts classroom go through multiple components multiple times, right?
Yes.
But for this particular one, I mean, it was hot and steady. I don't know how, if I look at the video itself, I recorded you for a total of, it was like a 10-minute video, which if we think of mini lessons,
It
that's
seemed
really
longer than that.
when we were watching
When I
it,
was
right?
watching it,
When we were
yeah.
watching it, but it's 10 minutes. Okay.
Okay.
So first of all, what did you see? How did it kind of connect to like, I'm going to just take a few notes and then I'm
Yeah.
going to share what I thought.
No, of course.
Okay.
So I definitely thought that I was modeling for them a think aloud strategy. We have a checklist of different think alouds. And for them, this is new. And so I really took the time to establish the process. And so while I thought that I took a long time to explain, I felt that I had to take the time and front load not only the vocabulary of I picture was one of them. What was the other one? And even though they have it written
I
down,
see.
I see, so that they understand that goes with visualizing, that those are the key phrases that they're going to use when they work with their partner during the collaboration part of Wicker.
Just on that note, like what did you notice like as far as, because I also noticed that it was like a lot of the think aloud. Did you, I noticed that you checked some of these off. What did you feel like you got and what were like the,
Correct.
Okay.
So I definitely named the strategy for them, the skill, thinking aloud. So we're thinking about what it is that's going on inside of our minds, and we're expressing that. I don't think I did a good job of stating the purpose, why we're doing this. I didn't get the why in there, or at least maybe it was implied. I did not do a good job of establishing why we should do this, why we should think about what it is that we're thinking.
okay. What else did you see?
I did use I statements,
For sure.
you know, demonstrate how the strategy, skill, or task is used. I think I did that well. I didn't alert my learners about errors to avoid.
This one's hard. I feel like
Yeah.
it can be hard, but it's also so necessary. I was even thinking of this particular strategy, like when would they potentially commit or see an error, right? Like in the math
Yeah.
classroom, I feel like errors we can think of right
Correct.
away.
I mean, I guess choosing the correct strategy to use. For example, thinking of a poem, a nonfiction poem, for example, visualizing a spider creating a sticky web. To me, that is more appropriate visualizing than at this point questioning. And I should have, or I could have at that point, given them an example, or could have opened up with, which strategy, which think aloud strategy would be more appropriate to use. But this is so new to them that I felt they need to experience it, and I need to demonstrate it for them first. But now looking at it, I think having a discussion as an opener and to get their brains thinking would have been better.
Okay.
And maybe using the Wicker partners to maybe inquiry, since our unit is on inquiry, that would have been appropriate.
Uh-huh. Okay. I didn't even think about that.
That really
Okay,
would have
so
been appropriate.
I was kind of like on the same page as you. I noticed that like you actually went back to looking at their background knowledge because it seems like you've already utilized one of the strategies before.
Yes.
You've already taught them one of the strategies. So try to like bring back like, are they actually using it? You even asked the day that you were gone, did anybody use this with their partners, right? And then moving into that, you were very like, we talked about teacher clarity. I feel like you were very clear on like how to use the strategy. I even liked like the gestures that you used while you were reading out loud, and even like the pause and continue to make it very clear, like, okay, I'm moving away from the text. Now we're going to actually utilize the strategy. And then you really kind of stayed in your headspace. You didn't send it back to them. They were like almost keeping tally. To me was more of like so that they could focus and pay attention to like where you were.
I did that in part for 3 reasons. One, I have some students that have a really hard time focusing. So I don't know if you noticed in the video that I came close to one student and sort of re-engaged by tapping on their paper. Or some students are more visual, especially with some students more being language learners. So the actions I think are really important. I also tried to maintain speaking clearly in English and also taking my time, because sometimes when I get really excited, I like to speak a little bit faster. And so I also tried to maintain my rhythm in English. Because I think no matter which language, if it's Spanish or English, we tend to talk faster when we're excited.
Do you feel like you're more aware of that this year? Because I always think of your particular student, right?
Yes, correct.
What's her name?
Fernanda.
Fernanda.
Yeah.
And right with her, I feel like it's ever so more like important. Like with her, we have to have our language supports foremost in mind, and it benefits because many of your students are language learners, not just Fernanda.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
absolutely. And that's part of the reason why I started out with these are the materials that you need. Take out your table tense, because these are words and phrases that they know.
Okay.
And it's to make sure that everyone feels included.
I like that. But it was very teacher clarity. Like when you were demonstrating, I could definitely see it. Like the think aloud, it was very visual for me, even in like the classroom, and I didn't know like the background that they didn't have the background that they had. I would agree. Like if we discuss like later on these abstract kind of strategies, skills, things that really typically live in our brains, I would say like the purpose is the one thing that I kind
Yes.
of left with, like the why am I learning this?
Yep.
Like why is it important to visualize, right? And then the errors to avoid is something that I didn't catch, but I feel like maybe it is something that would be worthwhile having a conversation about. Like,
Yeah.
can we fall into an error when we are reading, when we're trying to use these strategies? And if it does, what's a common error that it could probably fall into? The last thing that I had is a question, because then we'll decide. I
Yes.
feel like those are really like small little tweaks that I hopefully can make like enhance kind of like that particular moment. The only thing that I would have had as a question was the language objective. We've discussed these before. I know that you use them. Can you tell me like what's your experience so far with them? How are the learners actually taking them? Are they pretty familiar with them? Do they use them? Because that's part of our goals as well in establishing that purpose.
Absolutely. So I don't have it up there right now.
But I've seen them, so that's why I know.
for sure, absolutely. So the learners know that when they come in, they write them down immediately. And I always have, for example, today, we started with a KWL chart. And my first question was, do you know what a KWL chart is? And they haven't had experience with that. And I think part of it had to do with not being physically in school to work on what I know, what I want to know, and what I learned. And so that was the method that they would be learning, using a KWL chart, right? And they'll be working with groups. And this is something else, I don't know if you see there, I've got facilitator, reporter, administrator, manager. So
Do
when
you
they're
use those roles frequently?
just now, this
Okay.
is something new I just started. So we started out with Wicker, and we've got English side and the Spanish side, depending on which unit we're in, if it's a unit in Spanish or a unit in English, and they have all different partners, so they're never with the same partner. That's the goal. And then here, this is new, and it's in English right now because we're in an English unit, and they know that each person has a role. So no person is without something to do. It worked extremely well today. I saw students today that sometimes would shy away or not work. They were working. And each person bought into it today. I was extremely impressed. And they all knew that the person that's the facilitator, they coordinate the group, and they have to work as a team. So they're the problem solver in the group. The reporter, they act as the voice. So they're the person that is going to speak on behalf of the group. They're going to write on behalf of the group. Administrator, they're the person that encourages everyone to participate. They make sure that everyone's on task. They make sure that all the work is done. They make sure that every aspect of the work. Manager, they collect and distribute all the resources, paper, pen, scissors, whatever, and they're the only one that has access to the teacher.
Okay.
So then that helps with management. So I don't have 4, 5, 6 students from one
If there's
group
a question,
coming.
it's the group first that has to and maybe
It's
they could
the
even
manager
answer it
that
together
comes.
because it's the manager that's
Correct.
come. Okay.
And they know the rule in class, or the expectation is you ask 3 before you come to me.
Okay.
So, but
I feel like that's maybe where you find more success because now this particular strategy in the classroom, you've already established certain expectations, right? So now they're finding success with it.
But so I'm sorry, going back to the language objective.
Yes.
They know that that's where our purpose is. This is what is happening today. This is what our target, our goal for today is. And this is how we're going to achieve it.
Ah, okay. So do you feel like they do refer to them?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful.
And a lot of times if there's a question like, well, why are we doing this? I always refer back. And sometimes when we are doing something, I'll refer back to it. They say, do you see, this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it. And this is how we're doing it.
I love how you're stating that because I feel like many staff members right now have been asking themselves, what's the difference between a learning target and a language objective? Does it matter if I write that lengthy thing? How would you respond to it?
I would say it does. It does. And I would also say to make specific reference to it, not only at the beginning of the lesson, but during the lesson, especially when questions come up. Why are we doing this? I don't care for this. I don't like this, right? Just now today, in fact, we had finished our Unit 1, which was in Spanish. Our TDA is coming up November 30th, which is in Spanish. And I put on the board, I said to my students, I said, do not toss away anything from our Unit 2. This is what we're currently on. But Unit 1, these are the 5 items I want you to keep. And I said, I said, our text, La Abeja Haragana, I said, that's a beautiful text, not only because of the lesson that we learned, we love that, but it has dialogue in there. It has beautiful writing examples that you can learn from for your writing in Spanish. You have your dialogue. You have the how to write dialogue in Spanish and in English. You have your transition words. You have your organization. How do you write a personal narrative? And then your editing.
So
And
these
we'll
are
use-
particular lessons that they had from this
Correct.
text that they have in their binder?
Yes,
Okay.
from Unit 1. And so we'll refer back to that throughout the year. And then now in Unit 2, that's what we're going through. And that is our inquiry unit. So it's nonfiction. And they will have, we're starting to get into citing text through our
Okay.
graphic organizers. And that will also help them for their TDA coming up.
Okay. So then one last kind of question on that end, because it sounds like you're making it as clear as possible to your learners, like why do we have these things up
Yes.
on board?
Why are we doing this? Why do I give them sentence frames? And I always tell them, I'm like, we start out small. We have this big goal, right, to become writers. We're all writers and readers, and they go hand in hand. And the goal is to become proficient in Spanish and in English, reading and writing. And we have these sentence starters to help us get us thinking, modeling, and then to finish. Because one of the students said, "Oh, are we learning how to write? Are we ever going to write?" I said, "Hey," we're picking it apart, and we have a lot of examples to work with."
Well, because they don't realize that when they're reading, when they're pulling from these texts, it's actually also strengthening themselves as writers, right? It's not only
Exactly.
when I'm physically writing that I improve my writing skills.
Yeah.
Okay, so lastly, management, because I know that that's the other thing that staff kind of was asking, so I wanted to kind
Wow.
of pick at your head, like
And
managing when to put like these language objectives, how to like actually, how do you feel like you've been managing, keeping up with, because now you're teaching multiple contents as well.
Yeah, that's challenging for sure. So I feel because I've taught multi-language arts before,
Okay.
I feel for me, it's a lot more manageable. I mean, the students, I get them involved with the academic language, with the words I found to be the hardest.
Essential to like understanding.
Correct, essential to understanding the text. And so they help me create those, I guess, anchor charts, the words to remember. And then as far as language objectives, I always have those up on the board ahead of time.
Do you select like, because it seems like for literacy, do you select like something that's like your overarching or your main? Because like, again, like I said before, I feel like sometimes we go through multiple workshops in one session.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
So it depends on what we're doing. I prefer to go through a lot of the reading first and then add in some of the language along with it. I like to do a combination of both as we're going.
And I think that's what we can work together on to help support staff. And like this language objectives feel so heavy, like another ask for, how can we make it truly beneficial to our students? Like just some of the things that you said, you keep referring back to it like throughout the lesson. And then how can we make it manageable for us? Like what do I select? Like what do I actually put on my board?
Yeah.
Again, you teach a multi-content, which is language, multilingual language arts, right? And math.
Yeah.
So then to keep up with that, like you also have to, you must have learned some like managing or, organizing.
Yes. So I think I look at the lesson and I think of what are the most important words from that lesson, from the standards that are in my manual. I always converse with my partner, my teammate, and say, okay, what are we putting on the board today?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Oh, that's really beneficial.
Yeah.
So then
for
does
sure.
Johnny help support more with like the math?
The math.
Okay,
The
that's
math.
beautiful.
And then I look at what planners we have. I look at what plans we've done in the past, and I take from there.
Okay.
Because it's something that we've shared from other schools as well. Because you can't do it all by yourself. You have to collaborate.
100%.
Because if you don't collaborate, it's
Sink.
foolish.
Yes.
It's foolish
Yep.
not to collaborate,
Okay.
for sure.
Beautiful. So does it sound like, okay, the next step in this planner that I had discussed with you before, so we'll continue right here, but right now that I've come to observe, we've looked at a specific like kind of lesson that you kind of delivered. My hope is to try to take on a lesson. One, so that you can step back and almost see your learners, focus on your learners
Yeah.
as well. And just see really what they're, because sometimes when we're up on stage as a teacher, you miss some of it. You just do because you're trying to keep up like, the act. The other part is also just to try to see if like if there's a spin that in the way that like I teach it that you also could benefit from. So the goal is going to be now to kind of see what's coming up in your next in this unit and the mentor text. Fortunately with you, Jen, I feel a little bit more comfortable with other leads because it's continuity I feel kind of familiar with, and you're always very like welcome door, like open door, try whatever. This is kind of our classroom.
For sure.
So I love that. So I'm excited about it. It's more of like the when can it happen?
Yeah.
So first of all, like I know that you're continuing with some of these strategies. Do we want to do it sooner than later, or would we want to like think, Marlene, no, let's think of like later next next week?
Yeah, can we, let's see. So this
¿Qué
week,
piensas?
pues, porque ya salimos el martes, ¿no?
Sí, por eso estaba pensando. Pero sí quisiera todavía antes de que vayamos a descanso.
Ok.
Y como te digo, típicamente yo vengo, piensa como en tu grupo que de repente con el que todavía no has encontrado bien, siento como que algo no es al igual de, porque tienes dos grupos.
Sí, y mi primer grupo es como tenemos las lecciones de advisory, siempre está un poco más atrasado.
Porque quiero que en verdad beneficies tú. No vas a estar, tú no vas a estar haciendo nada más que de repente si hay un caos, ¿verdad?
No,
pero
claro.
vas a estar afuera, nada más observando como si fuera una pecera, ¿verdad? Vas a estar observando a los chicos para ver qué es lo que están reteniendo, que de repente todavía podemos seguir trabajando para que capten más.
A ver, ¿te puedo dejar saber mañana?
Claro.
¿Sí está bien?
Sí, claro. Y como te digo, y más que nada es bien como, tampoco quiero que tú hagas la lección para mí, más que me digas como qué texto, qué es la estrategia que quieres hacer para poder yo continuar.
Bueno.
¿Vale?
Sí. Déjame checar esta noche.
Y ya si no funciona, como te digo, seguimos trabajando tú y yo para poder encontrar una oportunidad así. ¿Vale? Tú revisa, nada, no hay nada de presión.
Perfecto, perfecto.
Okay.
Muchas gracias.